Hello everyone. Today I will talk about how the new Taiwan dollar surged by 10% in just 2 days, marking Taiwan's Plaza Accord moment. Additionally, China is forming alliances, connecting with Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN to resist the United States. Moreover, China is also improving relations and preparing for joint actions. In response to the US imposing additional tariffs, China not only retaliates with its own tariffs, but also collaborates with countries worldwide to combat the US's tariff hegemony. After China fully employed the strategy of forming alliances to win over allies, major countries are adopting a wait-and-see attitude towards making trade agreements with the United States, unwilling to make concessions. China's most evident move was to coordinate a joint statement from 13 countries during the 28th ASEAN Plus 3 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, which includes ASEAN and China, Japan, and South Korea, held in Milan, Italy. The statement warned that the intensification of trade protectionism would become a heavy burden on global trade, leading to economic fragmentation and affecting trade, investment, and capital flows throughout the region. Although the statement did not specifically name the United States, every sentence was directed at it. This can also be seen as a joint stance by major Asian economies to resist a US tariff war. Another move by China is to improve relations with Europe on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of China-EU diplomatic relations. On May 6, President Xi Jinping exchanged congratulatory messages with European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to celebrate the 50th anniversary of China-EU diplomatic relations. Xi Jinping stated that China and the EU should properly handle frictions and differences. He also called on both China and the EU to uphold multilateralism, defend fairness and justice, oppose unilateral bullying, and work together to address global challenges, making greater contributions to promoting a more equal and orderly multipolar world and inclusive economic globalization. The opposition to unilateral bullying by China and the EU is naturally directed at the United States. On May 6, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian confirmed at a regular press conference that over the past few years, exchanges between the legislative bodies of China and the EU have encountered some setbacks due to well-known reasons. In the current situation, both sides believe that it is very important for China and the EU to strengthen dialogue and cooperation. After mutual agreement, China and the European Parliament have decided to simultaneously and comprehensively lift restrictions on mutual exchanges. Earlier reports indicated that China plans to lift the sanctions imposed in 2021 on the European Parliament's Human Rights Group and 5 current and former members of the European Parliament. In 2021, after China sanctioned members of the European Parliament terminated official dialogue with China and froze the approval process for the EU-China Comprehensive Investment Agreement. Now, both China and the EU are facing bullying from the United States, and it seems both parties are willing to improve relations to counter a common adversary. The decision by China and members of the European Parliament to simultaneously lift restrictions on mutual exchanges is an important step towards changing relations in both directions. It appears that the European Parliament is also taking measures to lift restrictions on China, restore official dialogue with China, and even restart the approval process for the EU-China Comprehensive Investment Agreement. On April 30th, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun stated that they welcome members of the European Parliament to visit China and see for themselves. Additionally, China's strengthened cooperation with Japan and South Korea has also yielded results. Trump originally hoped to quickly reach a tariff agreement with Japan or South Korea, both to pressure China and to send the message that whoever reaches an agreement first will have leverage. However, under China's successive diplomatic maneuvers, Trump's dream has been shattered. The South Korean side has already stated that they will not reach a tariff agreement with the US before electing a new president on June 3rd. As for Japan, they have had 2 rounds of talks with the US, but it seems the more they talk, the further apart they become. It appears that Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, while outwardly friendly, is actually a tough opponent. On May 4th, the mainland CCTV public account Yuyuan Tantian published a commentary discussing how to understand Japan's strong opposition to the US. The article stated that after 2 rounds of tariff negotiations between the US and Japan, the US measure to impose a 25% tariff increase on key auto parts finally took effect on May 3rd. Japan's Minister of Economic Revitalization, Ryoichi Akazaki, who participated in the negotiations, said that Japan expressed concern about this and will continue to strongly demand that the US cancel these tariffs. Since Trump imposed tariffs on multiple countries globally, Japan's stance as a major nation has become a focal point for external observation. On one hand, Japan was the first to initiate face-to-face tariff negotiations with the Trump administration, but on the other hand, as the negotiations progressed, Japan's tough stance became increasingly apparent. First, it clearly stated that it would not make significant concessions in the tariff negotiations and was not in a hurry to reach an agreement. At the same time, Japanese public opinion also united against a common adversary, launching a wave of public opinion offensives against the United States. On April 16th, Japan and the United States began their first round of negotiations in Washington. This was the first face-to-face negotiation with another country since Trump imposed global tariffs. Trump, who was not originally scheduled to attend, joined the negotiations at the last minute, becoming the chief negotiator for the US side, and negotiated with Japan's trade representative, Minister of Economic Revitalization, Ryoichi Akasaki. After the negotiations, Ryoichi Akasaki received a red mega hat, signed by Trump himself, which stands for Make America Great Again. Subsequently, the US government publicly released a photo of Ryoichi Akasaki wearing the mega hat. Ryoichi Akasaki was harshly criticized in Japan for compromising national dignity. However, after this round of negotiations, the White House eagerly jumped in to promote itself, claiming significant progress in the US-Japan talks. Yet, Japan, not daring to be too bold, didn't even give them any face. Subsequently, Japanese media outlet Nikkei Asia directly used the term boasting to describe the US, pouring cold water on Trump's claims. Additionally, Japan's dissatisfaction was evident throughout the negotiations. After the first round of negotiations, no agreements were reached and no terms were signed. The conflict between Japan and the US lies in the US's baseless imposition of tariffs on Japanese products, especially targeting Japanese cars and parts. Japan needs the vast US automobile market. The US also wants to penetrate the Japanese automobile market. For Japan, automobile exports account for nearly one-third of its exports to the US. The 25% automobile tariff threat wielded by the Trump administration struck Japan deeply, leaving a significant wound. Remember, during Trump's first term, when the US and Japan reached an agreement in 2019 and signed the accord, the US privately assured that it would not impose higher tariffs on Japanese cars. At that time, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe publicly confirmed Trump's promise, but in reality, Trump treated the promise as if it were nothing, now turning his back on it. In the new term, a uniform 25% heavy tax was imposed on all imported cars, and Japan was not spared. The US completely disregarded its promise to Japan, which led the current Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba to directly question, expressing serious concerns about the consistency between the current US auto tariffs and the 2019 US-Japan agreement. Therefore, Japan's core demand in this negotiation is very clear. Besides the need for the US to lower reciprocal tariffs on Japan, it is crucial to exempt the 25% auto tariff. For this reason, Japan is willing to use the leverage of purchasing US natural gas, rice, or committing to buy more American cars to negotiate with the US. However, the Trump administration stubbornly refused, stating that the auto tariffs are based on the National Security Section 232 clause, which is non-negotiable, making it impossible to discuss exemptions. Faced with such a tough stance from the US, Japan is also standing firm this time. After returning to Japan, the Minister of Economic Revitalization, Akasaki Ryomasa, who was sent to negotiate, stated that he had urged the US to reconsider its extremely regrettable actions. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba went even further in the Diet, stating harshly that Japan will not just go through the motions to quickly conclude the negotiations. The second round of negotiations resumed shortly thereafter. According to foreign media reports, both sides touched on a more sensitive topic: exchange rates. It's important to note that the issue of exchange rates is a sensitive topic between the US and Japan. In 1985, the US had Japan accept the Plaza Accord, which forced a significant appreciation of the yen, leading Japan into the lost decades. Now, the Japanese side has also made a statement asserting that Japan will not make concessions on exchange rates. In the second round of negotiations, it was apparent that the issue of automobile tariffs was still unresolved, leading to a change in the scenario. After concluding the second round of negotiations, Japan's Minister of Economic Revitalization, Akasaki Ryo, returned to Japan and informed reporters at the airport about the negotiations. He stated that the Japanese side expressed concerns over the US tariffs on automobiles, auto parts, steel, and aluminum, and will continue to strongly demand the US to remove these tariffs. Such a firm stance of opposition from Japanese officials is rarely seen. Japan's stance is becoming increasingly firm. On May 2nd, Japan's Finance Minister Kato Katsunobu stated that Japan holds over $1 trillion in US Treasury bonds, which can be used as a tool during trade negotiations with the United States. Kato Katsunobu said that the main purpose of Japan holding US debt is to ensure Japan has sufficient liquidity to intervene in the yen if necessary. Last month, Kato Katsunobu had said that Japan ruled out the possibility of using US Treasury bonds as a bargaining chip in negotiations with the United States. Now, a month later, Kato Katsunobu has changed his stance, presenting a very firm attitude from Japan, even specifically targeting the US's vulnerabilities by stating that US Treasury bonds are also a bargaining chip. It seems that the chances of the US and Japan reaching an agreement in the short term are very slim. Currently, the place that listens to the United States the most is Taiwan, China. Apart from the fact that, without negotiations, Taiwan's TSMC has already agreed to significantly increase its investment in the US by $100 billion, the recent sharp rise of the new Taiwan dollar is also seen as a gesture of submission by Taiwan. Recently, the US dollar has fallen against various currencies, but the remarkable rise of the new Taiwan dollar against the US dollar remains quite conspicuous. On May 2nd, the new Taiwan dollar rose by 4.4 points against the US dollar in a single day. By May 5th, it had significantly increased by 4.9 points, reaching a peak of 29.59. The Taiwan dollar appreciated by more than 10 points against the US dollar within 2 trading days, marking the third largest trading volume in Taiwan's foreign exchange trading history. A currency rising by 10 points in just 2 days is indeed quite remarkable. Although there are various opinions in the market about the reasons for the sharp rise of the new Taiwan dollar, the Trump administration and its tariff policies are widely considered to be the trigger for this round of turmoil. On May 3rd, the Taiwanese authorities issued a statement saying that the first round of diplomatic negotiations between Taiwan and the US was completed on May 1st. Although Taiwan did not disclose the details of the negotiations, this has led to market speculation about whether the US has demanded Taiwan to actively appreciate its currency through terms similar to those used in the Plaza Accord with Japan in order to reduce the US trade deficit with Taiwan. Taiwan has an export-oriented economy. Such a significant appreciation of the new Taiwan dollar would have a major impact on the economy. On May 5th, the Central Bank of Taiwan held a press conference stating that the US Treasury Department did not request the appreciation of the new Taiwan dollar, and the rumored Mar-a-Lago agreement and demands for Taiwan to purchase US debt are unfounded. However, what the market noticed was that during the press conference, the Central Bank of Taiwan, in response to this unprecedented exchange rate fluctuation in 50 years, only urged market participants to remain calm and did not hint at any intervention in the foreign exchange market. This further raises suspicions that the new Taiwan dollar was forced to appreciate significantly by the United States. To summarize, first, after China strongly countered the US tariffs, it employed strategies of forming alliances, connecting with South Korea and Japan, and further uniting with ASEAN and Europe to resist the US. Second, as China took the lead in opposing US tariffs, other countries were also not in a hurry to make concessions to the US. Japan is becoming increasingly tough on the US, even suggesting that US debt could be used as a bargaining chip, indicating that even Japan cannot withstand the pressure of exporting to the US. Third, Taiwan seems like a lost soul without a master. The mainland will not unite with Taiwan to resist the US. When the new Taiwan dollar dares to surge by 10 points, Taiwan's critical moment might have arrived. The Lai Ching-te government truly does not fear selling out Taiwan.